All right, good to be back here on a Monday morning. Looking forward to another game. Saturday's result was not what we were looking for. I think to some degree our performance wasn't what we were looking for. In particular against a good team. My comments after the game and today would be pretty consistent. They did things to control the flow of the game in that first half, first quarter and a half in particular, that made the second half a little bit harder on us. We go 3 and out, three consecutive drives. They extended a couple drives in that sequence, just piled up those plays, and offensively we got on track in the second half. We did get one stop defensively, but ultimately I think our defense was worn down in part because of how that first half played out. They end up with 73 plays. We end up with 47, 20 of which were 2-minute drills. So there's not a lot of our normal, I guess, quote-unquote offense that we ran within the course of that game. Our guys played really hard. I think that's something we can count on. Made some plays, but we made some mistakes that they magnified. And like any game, it doesn't come down to one play, last play, anything like that. There was plays all over that game that, if we make them, we stop them, we get them off the field on defense. We make maybe our particular play on offense. The game doesn't come down to that last kick tying it to go into overtime, but that obviously happened, and I know we're in the midst of evaluating the place kicking piece. I think that's remains to be seen that how it's going to play out come Saturday. But I will say that it's something that we got to take a strong look at. Casey Kotzman this week as our place kicker, and ultimately as we move into this next game, be ready to go offense, defense, and special teams. In NAU, Northern Arizona, they've been a team that have come up with 3 victories this year, all against ranked teams, at least ranked teams when they played them. Defeating Montana, defeating Weber, and last weekend beating UC Davis. So very capable, dangerous team. And I think we saw firsthand how capable and dangerous they could be last year when we went down to NAU, and ultimately we squeaked a win out. They have a lot of I think talented players on both sides of the football. I know offensively they continue to try to find themselves as they've moved through the quarterbacks. They've played kind of 3 quarterbacks as it stands right now, and it made the switch at halftime to Flores this past weekend. And the last 2 guys, DeMonte and Flores, are quite a bit different. I think you can look at the stat sheet and see that, but they rolled with Flores, and he did a real good job in that second half, making plays for them. Defensively, they line up all kinds of different ways. They'll bring pressure. They'll rush 3. They'll have success with both. They'll cover with 8 in the back end. They'll play man to man. They'll be really aggressive all at the same time. So very multiple in their defense, and provides challenges because they're certainly not going to be lined up the same way from one play to the next. But all that being said, this week needs to be about us, our ability to take on a new opponent, and just live in this world right now of not wondering about what last week's loss did to us in the grand scheme of things, just bouncing back from it and finding a way to get a victory against NAU and going on from there. And I think our guys, came in this morning and watched the film and took that message to heart and went to work on Northern Arizona. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
The first few drives, I guess the first 2, both started with passes. I know the second one was a drop from Taco there, but what was kind of, I guess, the thinking behind starting with passes on those 2 drives?
Well, they're both RPOs. Tommy throws the first one away. It's a pull that he probably should just hand it off. And the second one, ideally we make that play and we, make the guy that's out there miss, and whether that's a 4 or 5 yard gain, it's the RPO game. Those type of throws need to be an extension of your run game, and obviously neither of those provided that. We were in 2nd and 10 in both those sequences, and couldn't get ourselves moving forward really those first 3 drives at all.
And it seemed like they were able to bottle up the run game a decent amount when you were running on those first few. Was that kind of as simple as that they just played well, or did you guys miss some things?
I think we missed a couple things on those first 3 drives. They just become magnified. We run on 3rd and 10 that first drive. That thing probably should pop for 15, 20, and we get 8. I think they made a good play. Maybe our 3rd drive, I think we handed it off again. I know Sean ran in that sequence as well. There's credit to the alignment. Obviously, if we're pulling balls that should be given, there's challenges there on our end at the quarterback position, and some of that credit does go to the defense and their alignment. But typically a run game, it takes some time to grow upon any one of these opponents, and ideally you're getting 3 and 4 that at some point becomes 6, 7, 8, and then you maybe pop one, and that process just took way too long in that game.
And then on the last drive, was there thoughts of running it at all during that, or was it kind of just like working up?
No, we get to 1st and 10 at the 18-19. The call was a run or a pass, and the way they lined up, we went after Cleveland on the go ball, and we didn't get it. On the flip side, the next play they rush 4, and we get sacked. So I think there was definitely thinking. You're at the 19, you have 3 timeouts, regardless of how much time is on the clock. You got all day basically, and unfortunately that didn't work out for us.
I think you mentioned after the game that your guys' defense just kind of wore down a little bit through the time possession. Did that kind of show up in the film, or I guess any other takeaways?
Absolutely, yes. You're on, and time of possession sometimes is very skewed. So I look at just pure number of plays, the play discrepancy, and the length of some of those drives that wears on you. And we're not playing tons of guys. We played 2 linebackers primarily through that game. I know Eli Abe came and played a few plays. We played our 4 starters in the D-line pretty heavy as far as the reps go. It wasn't that they played every play, but they played, for the most part, all those plays. So, it's a lot different when you get in the 4th quarter and now you're playing into your 60th play, as opposed to, in a lot of our games, you're playing into your 40th play. So, and that's just the nature of the beast. And I don't think that's anything to do with our off-season conditioning. I mean, we were able to hang in there because of our off-season conditioning, but that wore us down, and that's credit to them staying on the field, and certainly, we really like to play complementary football here, and we did not do that whatsoever for the first quarter and a half, period. And you sit and you're watching the game unfold as a coach, and you're hoping, okay, this hopefully doesn't come up and bite us. And then we scored pretty quickly on offense in the second half, and that's you'll take that. But ultimately, I think it did hurt us in the 4th quarter.
Team like NAU, their record could be kind of a little misleading. They have the wins you mentioned, but also that Sac State game went down to the wire.
Yep.
I guess, how do you kind of approach a team that's 3 and 5, but has shown they can hang with the team?
Well, I think the first thing you do is say, guys, remember that game last year? I think that's as simple as it comes. I mean, it was about the same point in time of the season. In fact, it was our 9th game last year. So we got to expect their best and understand that their best is good enough to beat anybody in this league. Why they've lost 5 games, you look at that a little bit too, but you look at, okay, how they win 3 games? How did they take Sac State down to the wire? What are the things they've done in those games to make it really hard on their opponents, and present that to the guys and go from there. I think they're a more than capable team that has our full attention, in large part because of that game last year.
And you mentioned they used a couple different quarterbacks this year. I guess, how has their offense differed maybe from what they used in RJ last year?
Well, he was pretty unique. I think at the tail end of the year, I would have said he was playing quarterback as well as anybody in our conference. And his ability to get the ball out quick, accurately. I mean, he threw for over 400 yards against us that day, and it was awfully impressive. And then athletic enough to make plays as well. they're mixing and matching, and really through the conference season, DeMonte had been their guy, and then they make that switch to Flores at halftime this past week. And, and Flores had been playing situationally, so I would say quite a bit different. They have the same, couple guys I know that really killed us that night to throw the ball to. So I think they're more than capable of doing some of the things, but they are blending in, more the run game, and then with Flores, certainly more the quarterback run game than they would have last year.
And then you mentioned just kind of how they line up a little bit on defense. Is there any players that have kind of, I guess, stood out in the film looking at them this year? Or?
Well, I 36, is it, they don't have a pronunciation guide on their deal. Is it Quite? I don't even, Quite? Go with the pronunciation guide right there. Yeah, he's pretty unique. I think 8 sacks, and very active. They got some big guys up front. I know McLaughlin's a guy as a young player at one of the safety spots that's really flashed, leads them in tackles and interceptions. But yeah, they look impressive. I think and I felt that way last year. And so there's some turnover, but a couple of the guys that are the same, and like I said, they don't line up the same way from one play to the next. And sometimes that's just the way teams play it. Some teams line up a certain way almost every single play, and there's advantages, I suppose, both ways on both sides to that. But they make it complicated, and they make your preparation a little bit more difficult for sure.
Can you talk about what Drew's playing through? That club on his hand and still being so productive with something like that that he's dealing with.
Yeah, it's been I've never seen anything like it, so he's been playing through, just having basically his wrist protected, essentially, wrist and hand, I guess I would say, and then in the midst of it, he's had issues with a thumb and now a couple fingers, and that's been what's happened the last 2 weeks, where it has taken him off the field for a portion of the game, but I appreciate in both of these last 2 weeks his ability to deal with it and then come back out and continue to play at a high level. I thought it was really encouraging, and Blake Stillwell, continues to get more and more play, and I think he's continued to make more plays and be more comfortable at the same time. But no, certainly appreciate Drew's toughness and willingness to go out there and do the things necessary to really play that free safety position the way we need it to be played.
Coach, I just want to go back to the final drive real quick. Seemed like the offensive line really started to dominate in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, opening up those holes. So once you got down there on the 30-yard line, was there ever a thought to maybe with all 3 timeouts try to run the ball, or was it just strictly passing? Yeah,
Victor asked that already. I know, and that's okay. Yes, yes. The first and 10 call was a run pass type of call, and their look presented a one-on-one that we went and threw to Cleveland on that play, and we didn't complete it. Yeah, I mean it's easy to go back and say, boy, we should have then on 2nd and 10 run the ball. We didn't. We got sacked on 2nd and 10, and then you're creating a situation where you have to throw the ball on 3rd down. So yes, I know there was a thought on 1st down. There was a call that was could have gone either way, and it went to the pass. We didn't make the play, and you can't go back and change what we called. I think for future, would we treat that a little bit differently? I suppose we could, and we might.
On that drive, it seemed like that was maybe Tommy's best passing drive, especially given the context. Is that one up there as far as you can think of as one of his best throwing drives?
Yeah, I think he's performed pretty well in those 2 minutes. He's had a few of them now this season. And I think he knew the way they were lining up, and then in tune what they were giving us, meaning those outside throws to Cleveland and Ty, and then I know he hit Trayton in the middle, and Trayton made a really good catch on another one to the edge. So yeah, I think in a 2-minute, especially when there's a certain part of the field that they're going to give you some things, and I thought we took those things within that sequence, and then when they dialed it up in that part of the field where you usually dialed up, that's when we didn't get it done. So yes, good to a certain point, but ultimately, that's one of those drives that when when you don't finish it off, it's kind of all for naught.
Any updates on the injury front heading into?
Yeah, Derek is out for an extended period of time. I know this time last week we were hopeful that it would be maybe more short term, but I think an extended period of time, meaning certainly through the regular season right now, is where that one's at. Lane came back and played a play or two. I think he's working back into it. Elijah's at least another week out at the running back position, but getting closer. I think defensively, I think Danny's on track, to be out for a few weeks, but to be back, hopefully, at the end of the regular season here. I know I put Lavelle as the 2, in part because we've been in a day-to-day mode with Lavelle. I think last week Lavelle practices Wednesday and Thursday, but if you think back to Wednesday and Thursday, those weren't exactly full-speed practices here. So he looks good out in a situation where we're not really opening up. He gets to game time, and it just didn't go for him. So, and that's another one. I think Miles Jackson from first game to second game, I think there was a marked improvement in his game too. So, let's just put Miles there and anticipate that he'll start. If we get Lavelle back, I suppose that'll be a bonus. So, I imagine I covered everybody, but I might have missed one.
Have you addressed Garrigan and Anaya? Have they been hurt too, or is that just?
Yeah, Garrigan, I thought we did last week, but Garrigan's hopefully a week or two more down the road. I end up talking to a bunch of different groups, so I don't remember who I addressed it with. But yeah, he landed on his shoulder pretty hard against Cal Poly, and then Christian's out for a little bit longer. Christian had an injury that occurred during practice the week prior, and hadn't been playing a lot, I guess, anyway. So there was no depth chart change. But yes, he's out for a little while still. I would say probably through the regular season.
Was that McCabe that went down briefly in the game?
Yeah, he cramped up. Was out, I think, 3 plays. That's when Eli Avey came in and played for those 3.
With Brendan, he struggled obviously at Weber and Sac State a little bit. Is that just because he had other good games, or in practice he's shown that he kind of kept that job, or in case he just didn't beat him out, I guess, is there?
Well, I think you look at that position, okay? Brendan clearly won the job out of fall camp, and he had some early success, had the struggles he had at Weber, roll with them, was able to stack up a couple decent games after that. And, I thought he bounced back within that Sac State game, at least how he hit the extra points, so you stay with them. Again, practicing very well, kicking the ball in practice very well. And, it didn't add up on Saturday when he's given those opportunities. And, we really got to separate the 3 positions that Brendan has currently played for us. He's been a extreme success on the kickoff side. He has negated the kickoff game by and large all season. And then punting wise, he made a big difference the other day. And our net punt continues to crawl up. Our net punt was 48 yards on Saturday. So Brendan, the kickoff specialist and the punter, has played really well. Now on the place kicking side, it hasn't been that, and I don't sit here and want to think that one thing has anything to do with the other, doing too much, any of that stuff. But it just, when given those opportunities, it hasn't added up. So we had stuck with them, and I think, like I said on Saturday, it's something that we got to take a really hard look at this week. And if that's going with Casey come Saturday, that's the decision we'll make. And Brendan will continue to do a great job, in the other 2 really important areas of our special teams. So I have appreciated his mindset through it, and not having one failure lead to the other. One of those other jobs. It hasn't leaked into that, I guess, but ultimately we have to get the field goal situation straightened out.
I know I kind of spoke to it too, or Tommy did too, but 49-43, having a chance to score in both of those situations, a touchdown, I'm sure that probably plays a factor, right, in as far as like putting him in that situation. Maybe you would have liked to avoid that, obviously.
Well, I think I know before the half you take what you can get, but we dropped a touchdown 2 plays before that, and then at the end of the game we are down to the 18 or the 19, and then we take a sack and we make it more complicated. I mean, so that's why I say it's not. It's easy to look and say, hey, we make those 2 quick kicks, we win the game. I think that's how a lot of people look at it, that simplistically, and that's not the way football works. We don't make the one before the half, so we don't have those points. So we're not dealing with those points as the game goes along. We take 2 leads in the second half. We can't hold those leads. We drive down, and get ourselves in the red zone. We're aiming to get a touchdown there. Okay, we don't get a touchdown. We need the field goal to tie it up. We don't get it, and then that's the result. So, I'm not excusing missing those kicks by any means, but I'm also not placing the blame on Brendan Hall for us not winning that game.
Any more in the room?
Oh, just
Sorry.
one for me. I guess Nolan, at this point in the season, I guess what have you thought of his play and just I guess.
Yeah, I think he's played really well. I think coming off an ACL that occurred mid-November last year, had his surgery beginning in December. I've been really pleased with not only how he's played, but how he's led, how he's continued to improve as far as even his movement relative to coming off that knee injury. And he's the strongest leader we have on this team. Obviously elected a captain, and he's playing his best football right now. And that's what you want. We don't have a big senior group, but you want that group to have their best season. When it is their final one, and I think he's a great example of that. And we'll definitely need him down the stretch. I know him and McCade were Ironmen the other day, and we need to get back to where we can roll a third guy in there. But until we get Danny back, we might not have that. So we'll really need those guys to shine these next few weeks.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, Coach, couple follow-ups for you. You mentioned Snell being out. That's such a unique, well, not unique, but it's such a difficult position to play. So, I mean, I know Rylar has done well filling in there, but what is the learning curve like, especially when it is such a effective player like Snell?
Well, I think you could see this past week, and a lot of our offense wasn't able to develop, but we're probably just not going to ask a guy like Ryan to do all the things we would ask Derek to do. I think that's where you start. Derek is uniquely talented, and he's got the number of reps playing that position that and the wide variety of things that position can be asked to do that. We're not taking for granted. Just throwing a guy in there is going to be able to do it. So I think you find a few things that we can rep, through the course of these weeks, and then ideally, Ryan feels really good about those things going into the game. But it does, it takes some things away from us for sure because of how skilled and talented that Derek is.
And just going through the schedule across the league, it's going to be a wild November. So, I mean, how do you hope your team sort of embraces the upcoming challenges?
Well, we can't worry about anything else going on, but understand that there's a lot that will go on. I think that's, because one game, that loss at Idaho does not end anything that we want to accomplish. It doesn't take us out of the running for anything. But it really also just has to put the focus on us and us taking care of the week in front of us and not worrying about what happens in any other cities across our conference on Saturday. Worry about our game, that result, and then see how that unfolds the next week. And then what does that mean for next week? We got to be just about that game. So, yeah, there's a lot to play out. Whether you're in the driver's seat or not at the end of October doesn't crown anybody a champion. It doesn't. It's where you are, that middle week or whatever it is right before Thanksgiving in November is what counts. And for us to get to where we want to get to, we certainly can't look ahead. We gotta look at Northern Arizona and know that they're the one in front of us right now.
Sort of unique in the fact that you guys haven't really had to, quote unquote, bounce back from the losses in the scope of the Big Sky season the last couple of years. It's either been early or late. So, I mean, what's that dynamic like?
Well, Yeah, it hasn't been that way, right? We lost our last one the first year, and we didn't lose one last year. I don't think it's much different than losing a game early. I suppose, especially if you can just look at what's ahead of us this next week. You start thinking about too many things beyond that. That's when you're in real trouble. Whether it's early season, mid season, late season, whatever. If you can look just at that next opponent and really. Hey, what do we need to do to play better? Is it, were there some things through the course of the week that we could improve upon? Was there some things within our preparation or planning, whatever, that we can improve upon so we can go out and play better than we played? We can coach better than we coached on Saturday. I think that's what you need to be focused on, regardless if you're coming off a win or a loss. But I do think we have a hungry, dialed-in team, I guess, and if we'd have looked at that game, Coulter, and we said, boy, we didn't play very hard. We didn't show up in that regard, then I'd be really worried. We played hard. We went after it. It was tooth and nail to the bitter end, and, we got a team that'll fight, and I trust that they'll fight back the way we need them to this week.
Talking about AAU, they do such a good job with their receivers in like a lot of different ways, stretching the field, but also sort of horizontally as well. What sort of challenges that, especially open field tackling one-on-one?
Yeah, they're guys that can figure out a way to get open. They do a lot of things that can take advantage of man or zone based on your coverage. And I know against us last year they really did a good job of exploiting that, and they've done it this year as well. And then to your point, they are out in space. Can you corral them? Can you tackle them when they do catch the ball? That's about playing with leverage and trusting your teammates that are going to rally to the ball at the same time and tackling well. We did not tackle very well, I know, in that game last year, but like any game that goes that way, and there's certainly an amount of credit that goes to those guys, that are breaking those tackles. So, we got to mix it up on them, coverage-wise. Hopefully, make it hard on these, whichever quarterbacks are out, whichever one of the quarterbacks is out there, and keep the ball in front of us. And by and large, we've done that this year. We haven't been perfect, but we've been able to mix it up and play more variety of coverage, and then and we've tackled fairly well when we've had the opportunity to.
And defensively, you mentioned their defensive front. I've only watched them 3 times, but it looks like they do a lot of moving around stuff and stuff like that. Is that sort of the key to what they do in terms of bringing pressure?
Yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, they line up a lot of different ways. They twist. To your point, they involve their linebackers with some pressures to get different number advantages. And they got some good players doing it too. It's not just they're doing this with average guys. They got some good players that they're creating confusion, and those guys are taking advantage of those opportunities. So it'll be really important that we offensively stay in advantageous down and distances, something we haven't done a great job. I think in particular the last couple first halves of games. And hopefully we got a chance to run our whole complement of offense versus a game like last week where it was a pretty narrow part of it.
Just wanted to ask about Brent Vigen because he's just playing so well. He's been playing well for a couple of years now, but the last month it seems like he's really come on. What do you think has been the key to his production?
Well, he took another step physically. I think this offseason first and foremost, and then I think he continues to dial in on what are the things that would take him from being a really good player to a great player. And that's at that position. It's being very disciplined and not having a whole bunch of plays in any one week where you're jumping out of your gap. You're trying to be a guy making a play. You're playing within our defense, and then at the same time you're getting those passing situations. You can count on him to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So he's gotten better physically. He's continued to hone his game and mentally, and he has played so hard. And not that he didn't before, but I think he's found a new level with how he's pursuing the ball. I mean, the amount of hustle tackles he's made from a DM position, I think, is something that's very noteworthy this season. And we'll certainly need him to continue to play at the level he is, because he's been very impressive this fall.
And last one for me, I wanted to ask you, there's 5 guys in your program that were recruited 6 years ago and that made it to this point. Pickering, Snell, Lavelle Price, Lane Sunder, and Nolan Asmussen. I mean, what do you think of those guys to get all the way to this point as a group?
Yeah, it's a unusual road for that crew. They, that would have come in the fall of 18, I guess, right? And would have redshirted. I think Nolan was the one that maybe played in some games, but still redshirted. Been part of that team in 19. Obviously all that went on in 20 into 21, and a lot of different stories there. Not a lot of acclaim, I'm guessing, on signing day for that group collectively, I suppose. But each class needs that group of guys that, whether they started off on whatever level of scholarship or they started on as walk-ons, that find their way, and that's a impressive group. A lot of different stories that I think can inspire. I think that's probably the thing you look to. A bunch of different positions represented there, and I think guys that can inspire those younger players that are trying to find their way to make it. And their trip won't be 6 years in most cases, but a pretty unique time that those guys were involved.